Welcome once again to Pub in the Desert, where we bring you honest, curious conversations about faith and the human experience. I'm Matthias Miller here with my co-host Kevin David Kridner. And before we dive in, I want to recap our three guiding principles. First, you don't need to be fixed, you need to be known. And we define love as knowing and being known. Second, we approach difficult topics with genuine curiosity. We aren't here to win debates or win arguments, but to understand. And then third, we don't come with preset agendas. We let conversations unfold naturally, following where authenticity leads us. So pull up a chair, grab a drink, and let's explore what union looks like with God, with others, and with ourselves. And Kevin, this is always the battle. Like before we get started on the I'll say something. Hey, I want this off air, and then it leads into a conversation. So you opened up with this fantastic story about your dad's bumper sticker, and I think you should recount that for our listeners.
It was in the 80s, so a long time ago. But he had a bumper sticker that said, "People are great, life is terrific," or "People are great, business is terrific, life is wonderful." And he had it as like kind of a sarcastic thing. But the amount of comments when he was out and about that he would get on the bumper sticker always fascinated me as a little kid. Like they were talking about this bumper sticker, but they'd be like, "Oh, I love your bumper sticker." And my dad's response pretty typically would be, "Oh, really? What do you love about it?" And it would like engage them in this conversation that they weren't so sure that they wanted to be in. Like, did I offend you? Is it a joke? So there's that unstable territory, and that was very like my dad. Like, if he could keep you off balance, like he would, and so like he would just love the awkwardness of the moment, and they would be like, "Ah, what should I say?" It's like watching an episode of The Office and Michael Scott is saying something and everybody at home is like cringing around because they just know it, but it's so utterly awkward. Like it was like many moments like that. So utterly awkward.
We've had conversations about Pub in the Desert merch. I think maybe this could be our first T-shirt.
I think it could be. Ah, ah, ah. Uh, Haley, you need to get on that as soon as you see this video.
Yeah, exactly. She'll start editing, be like, "Wait, what?" Um, all right. Well, so I'm curious. I mean, we can that's a launching pad in and of itself. But what's been? I'm curious to hear what's been on your mind this past week, and actually straight up, this shows how distracted I actually am. But we've been in this conversation about humility for the last 2 weeks, um, and um, do you want to pick up that conversation?
Sure, sure. I'm always up for that conversation. To be honest,
So
I'm up for any conversation.
for any conversation. There's this little nagging, like, okay, what does authenticity look like? Here's a fun question. What does authenticity look like when you also have an occasional compulsion to pursue, not only pursue open loops, but then also to close loops as well? That's a confusing life to live in. So humility, we talked about as openness, curiosity, as relational, and talking about it being inseparable from transformation. So we touched on the first two in particular, but um, how I want to dive into the humility as relational and how humility is tied to transformation. Um, And I think for me, like initially, we're talking about humility as being relational, and it's like, um, sure, what's the connection? I don't think it's just immediately obvious throwing those words out that you would expect them to go together.
Yeah. Well, and I've been thinking about this last week since our last conversation, but if humility is the desire to learn, what's the opposite of that? What's the antithesis of humility then?
I mean, it's fundamentally closed-mindedness, but then there's also, um, Okay, here's an interesting thing. Because in most environments, you have learning as like there's a teaching act and a learning act. And
Hmm.
it's a single directional approach. Like you're sitting, you're taking in a lecture, taking a sermon, taking something like that. Somebody is imparting something to you.
Right.
And but there's also a style of learning that's much more collaborative, where it's like, okay, yes, I'm teaching you something, but we're engaging in this together, back and forth, back and forth. Yeah, learning to ride a bike as a kid, it's like, like it's engaged in the moment. Um, so one trait that you see in the opposite of humility and the desire to learn is the desire to tell everybody how to do things. Um,
Right.
there's another similar trait, which is just being closed off to accepting any new perspectives or information, which is the opposite of curiosity.
Right. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, so if the desire to learn is humility, or at least a major component of humility, then the lack of a desire to learn is the antithesis of that. Um, and maybe we would be so bold as to call that arrogance.
Right.
I already know. I know everything. And so in a sense, it's like what stops transformation? Arrogance.
So here's a curious question with that, because pride is a word that's often associated with arrogance. And pride seems to be like one of those weird words that gets thrown around a lot, like something you shouldn't be or do.
Hmm.
And but then it's like, right, but how would I even know? And the way it's most typically used as an attempt to control people, either arrogance or pride, is like if you are, I mean, it's kind of the tall poppy syndrome, but like if you rise too far, then we're going to cut you off at the knees at your, you know, our height. Um,
Mm.
but you're saying, what if pride and arrogance is not about some kind of it's completely disconnected from the external achievements that we have or have not gotten. What if it really has more to do with, even after we've achieved something, do we still have an openness to learn? And I think somebody who truly is in that, okay, and there's an interesting thread too. So let's take a look at somebody like Solomon, who was the wisest man who ever lived, who had God bestow a gift of wisdom to him, and explored all of that and fell short. And there's kind of two responses that come out of that. I think it's a very ecclesiastical response, which is, I don't think there is anything more to learn, and it's kind of a surrender into some form of despair,
Yeah.
or it's also saying, I want to learn more, but I've reached the bounds of my understanding, and kind of falling on your knees before the mystery of God, the universe, and life, and everything that's beyond our capacity for knowing.
Right. Right. It reminds me of that story of Saint Thomas Aquinas, probably considered the greatest theologian, most shaped the theology of the church from, from a very foundational place. And at the end of his life, he has this encounter with God and comes back to his secretary and says, "I'm not writing anymore. In fact, everything I've written is as straw."
Hmm.
And the secretary's like, "Well, we're in the middle of this last, book or this last thesis," and he's like, "I'm leaving it. I'm not going to touch it." It's like in the presence of the eternal, in the presence of God, it became really clear that a lot of what he was doing was just arrogance, and he just left it behind. It wasn't useful to him anymore. And I wonder if we all come to that point at some point. I've built my towers, I've created my kingdom, I've done everything that I set out to do. And I look back on it and I'm just really not that impressed. There's something greater here. I just wonder if we all have that event horizon. Like there's that dividing line between the extent of my knowledge and my capabilities, and then the mystery beyond that. And do I jump off into that mystery? Almost like in the movie Interstellar at the end, where Matthew McConaughey decides the only thing he can do is fall into the black hole, like into the mystery. I've surpassed, I have reached the limits of my ability to understand. And so the only thing left to do is fall into this black hole, fall into the mystery. I wonder if that's where humility starts.
Yeah. I mean, that makes it makes sense to me. The curiosity then around this is one of the fruits of arrogance then and pride is that it shuts off relationship.
Right.
And so really one of the things that we're doing is if you take the definition of love as knowing and being known and you reframe it in the context of teaching and learning, then part of the knowing is learning from your perspective and experience. And I think it's worth diving in. What do you actually derive from that? But then there's also the being known, which is being able to self-disclose what your experience and lessons have been and share that with others in a way that they can hopefully apply and benefit from. Um, so there is this, I mean, again, just strictly rationally and logically, like how else are we going to learn? Well, obviously you can learn by doing experimentation. You can learn by, becoming a lone ranger out in the jungles, watch things be lost in your own thoughts. But fundamentally, human learning is an exchange of ideas. It's a knowing and
Yeah.
being known.
Right.
Um, And I think one of the questions for me that naturally follows that, you and I have had these conversations, um, is that what, how do you gauge what you learn and what you impose? Because the lessons that you take from somebody else's experience might not be the lessons that they're trying to share with you.
Hmm.
For example, um, I mean, just you can probably come up with a better example than this. For example, put your hand on a hot stove. Two lessons you can derive. One, don't put your hand on hot stoves. Uh, Two, double check, make sure it's turned off. Three, don't have stoves in your house.
Right. And
And
the human response to that scenario. Working with people over 30 years, I've seen some fascinating responses to that scenario, metaphorically speaking. There's some people who put their hand on the stove, they get burned, and they don't even want to be in the same room as the stove.
right,
There's no cooking happening because I'm not going close to the stove. Okay, that's one response. The other is, well, how close can I get without getting burned?
right,
And that's another response. The other is to stand back, and I'm sure there's infinite responses to it. The other is to stand back and watch the stove and try and interpret from a distance what the stove is actually doing. Is it actually hot? Is it not? If I take a step closer, will I feel the heat? Like there's the assessment of it. And so I think we all have different ways of interpreting that.
well, then there's also the response of, let's touch the stove again. Is it hot this time?
Right.
Ah, okay,
Yeah.
well, what about a third time?
Right. Right. Is it still hot? So there's that refusal to learn. It's interesting.
But,
The story comes to mind as you were kind of walking through what you were just saying. I was in the Midwest years ago, and I was at a brewery, and it was for like a bingo night, and it was a fun gathering together, that kind of thing. Towards the end of the night, there's a group that's sitting around talking, all in their 20s and 30s, and they're talking about the omniscience of God, like you do at a brewery bingo night. And they start going, and this thought occurred to me, and I'd been wrestling with this thought for a very long time. I was curious about it. So I'm like, hey, maybe I should just throw this out here. Maybe this will add something to the conversation. So they're talking about, does God know everything? Does he not know everything? All that kind of stuff. And so I was like, what if we see our life as a series of choices, an infinite series of choices? Every choice brings another series of infinite choices. And so you look at this grid work of what your life looks like, and there's all these potential choices. What if we were to say that God knows all the potential choices that you would ever potentially make and the outcome of those choices to an infinite extent? This really, to me, made sense with omniscience
mhm.
because that's way beyond us, right? And so I was like, what if it's not that he knows that every decision you will make and which path you will take, but he knows the potential for every decision you could make and the outcomes for every one of those decisions. In a sense of we have free will to choose kind of thing. I just throw it out there as a curiosity, as a conversation. And I'll never forget this. There's a guy sitting next to me on a bar stool, probably in his late 20s, and looks me dead in the eye. And I think he's going to engage in the conversation. He looks me dead in the eye and goes, "That's not true. That's a stupid statement." I was like, well, I wasn't saying true or false. I was just adding to the conversation as far as, are you curious about this? And he looked at me and goes, "No, not at all. That's not how it works." I was like, "You know that? You know it doesn't work like that. Like you have proof of this." "I don't need proof." Okay. To me, that story stands out as the height of arrogance.
Well, side note, I want to know how he thinks it works. Like,
Right. Like I would even have been like interested in that conversation. I don't think it works like that. I think it works like this. Okay, we've got somewhere to go.
right.
But it was just shut down. Nope, that's not happening. Like, okay.
Side note, to that point, the thing that drives me, good in computing, powers and exponents are a really powerful thing. And it's one of the reasons we're going into a little technical rabbit trail. One of the reasons why fractional numbers are very difficult to represent is because they don't. I mean, really, at some point you have to approximate them because you have to choose what level of precision you want. Where we have limitations. Computationally. And when you look at moment by moment, like literally just look at the number. Let's start with one person. Okay, first one person against the billions who've lived across eternity. Then let's look at how many decisions you make on any given day.
Right.
That actually, and they might be small, but they do compound. And then let's look at and then and for each of those decisions then there's especially the earlier that you are in life the broader the vast of subsequent possible decisions because you have who knows how many like is it yeah, a quarter million meaningful is it decisions how do you even quantify that is it more than that
Right.
who knows so you have the number of people times the not just the decisions, but it's the decisions times the decisions because there's if there's 10 possible choices that you could have, each of those could have 10 more possible choices and they
Yeah.
could lead back. And then it's the implications. Now, if that's not complicated enough, then you also have to take into effect that these are not solo independent beings. So you
Right.
have the possibility, I mean, my decision can influence like you don't just have to consider the natural outworking of my decision. You also have to consider that if this other person over here makes this decision, the outcome of my decision is going to be X. But if they make a different decision, the outcome is going to be Y. And
Mm,
if you actually spend any amount of time thinking about that whatsoever, your brain explodes. Like
right.
the number that represents is so astronomically beyond our possible comprehension. It's
Right. Yeah. It's not arithmetic. Like it, it's not A plus B equals C. It's on an exponential level. It's like a billion factorial. And those you don't know, like the exclamation point at the end of a number, it means you take every number before that and add it all up together individually to get to a billion. Like it's just like the growth cycle in the amount of choices is mind-blowingly incomprehensible. And yet I want to sit here and tell you that's not true.
so but by the way, this leads into a fascinating conversation. So how do you what truly is randomness, and does randomness exist in real life? I'm not smart enough to articulate this, but I can tell you this, that when software when you want to generate a random number on a computer, and this is like the most fundamental kindergarten version, and I'm sure there are people way smarter than me who understand more sophisticated ways how this works, but
Again, we're not experts here.
we're not experts. But just sharing what I know, especially in the early days before cryptographically secure randomness was a thing, what it often ended up looking like was, let's go grab un, let's grab data that is so unpredictable that we don't can't identify any pattern in. So what's the heat of the what's the precise temperature of the processor at this exact moment? Very difficult to replicate if you have any level of precision. Let's track the mouse movements. Let's have a human move the mouse and use the positions of the mouse to introduce data into that. But really, at some level, there's a sense in which randomness really could be defined as not random, but just the factors are so detailed and so precise and so untraceable and so varied and so multiplied that there's no possible inference from A to B. Like, it could be that because you got to bed late, you didn't sleep well, and you happened to wake up while you were having a dream about a caramel macchiato, that when you got up the next morning at Starbucks, you had there was a certain type in part of your diet yesterday, there was a certain type of impulse to buy a certain type of item because you felt that way. You just felt like doing this. And that's just in some logical sense there's a whole other types of other things too. If you understand that our minds work on a chemical basis, and it's not like computing where it's strictly hard and fast ones and zeros, which is there's a whole other rabbit hole conversation of that. But it's like that even the variance in how those chemicals interact, because there isn't this hard and fast like there's so many things that influence them and how they act. Like, I'm gonna drive us bonkers with like the depth to this whole thing. Um,
Right.
There's apologies to all the non-geeky people out there. I just,
Right, right. We're so
like,
sorry.
what does this have to do
But
with
but
arrogance and humility? No, go ahead.
but I think you're approaching the event horizon. You're describing what it looks like. Like you get so steeped in this genre, this interest, this computing, numbers, how does it work, that kind of thing, that at a certain point you have to go, I can't go any further. I'm beyond my ability. And strangely enough, there seems to be a trend in human beings that, at least in the past, and maybe this is changing now, but there seemed to be this trend that human beings hit that event horizon late 30s, early 40s.
Right.
Just emotionally, socially, developmentally. I've spent all this time building this tower, building this life, building this kingdom, and now I'm at the top of the tower. I'm laying my eyes on my kingdom, and it's not what I thought it was going to be. I used every resource I had to get to a place, and I got to that place, and then I'm not satisfied with that place.
So, in your experience working with people, what do they think they're going to get from that?
In my experience, people generally think that life will be easier, it'll be peaceful, it'll be simple, it'll be like, I've made it, I can relax.
Yeah.
But it's like the example of Alexander the Great, right? I mean, it's a very Oedipal story, like where your father was this person, you're trying to live up to his expectations, that kind of thing. So you set out to conquer the world. And then there's this literary reference to it. I forget who wrote it, but it's like, and I think it's actually referenced in Die Hard as well, to bring all the genres together, um, where Alexander reached the extent of his kingdom, and he wept, for there were no more worlds to conquer. But I think the tragic thing there is, yes, maybe externally you had conquered the known world, but there's one thing you haven't conquered there, and that's why he's weeping: his ego. The question, why did I have to conquer this whole territory? Something he didn't want to engage in. I think that's the event horizon. I've come to the extent of my abilities, and will I fall into the black hole, or will I retreat and try something different? And strange connection here that just came in my mind. Maybe that's the church in the West has done that. They've reached their event horizon, and instead of stepping into the mystery, we just take a step back and remake and remake and remake. Make it bigger, make it shinier, make it more attractive, make it more entertaining, make it whatever, instead of jumping into the mystery.
Well, if you look at there's a ton of threads here, but if you look at the books that have been written in Western Christianity about the Bible, like think about taking a text like the Bible and the absolute explosion of creation. Like just sticking with books as an example. But look at the volumes upon volumes upon volumes. I wonder what the multiplier is. Like if you take the Bible, if you take the words written in Christian books divided by words in scripture, just as an example, what's that multiple? Like that's pretty interesting.
Right.
It's just books. That's like there's other types of art. And I'm not saying that art isn't inherently wrong. It's just there's music. Look at the volumes upon volumes upon volumes of music um, that has been produced, has been written, and that coming out of that. And so at some point, there is kind of this critical mass, like you're describing. And so there's a few other thoughts I want to see if I can pull together here and ask a question. But at some level, humility is saying there's I think curiosity naturally lends itself to some form of expertise. Like there's kind of this snowball effect that you go far enough down the rabbit hole, like you realize that you can't. Okay, you could become curious about a lot of things, but at some point, just through the continual, unless you're very actively fighting this, but just for whatever reason, there does tend to be a drift into a certain direction, and you go deep down that rabbit hole. Um,
Hmm.
and so it could be that, so as a human, what happens when, so in what you're describing, we chase knowledge because there's something that we think it's going to give us. And just my personal experience, I was chasing knowledge because, well, it was a means to an end, and that end would hopefully lend fulfillment in some capacity.
Hmm.
Um, and so if that doesn't do it, then it's like, well, take it. It's kind of like, what do you do with the hand on the hot stove? But I would back up and be like, well, maybe it's over here. Maybe it's over here. Maybe it's there. And then, and so you come to the limit of your understanding. Then you realize that fulfillment actually doesn't come. It's not out there. It's here. It's with him. It's in the mystery. But from that place of mystery, then there's a world of difference between curiosity that is seeking knowledge as a means to an end versus starting from this place of mystery with him and using that as a springboard for curiosity.
Hmm.
Um, I theoretically had a question in there somewhere. I don't know what it was. No, okay, but here's where I wanted to tie it back is because there's then two approaches with Western Christianity. It's like we have reached kind of this critical mass of knowledge. Like, what else is there to know? So then what am I going to
Right,
do? And I think for some people, it's like, let me take a step back. What about Buddhism? What about Stoicism? What about other worldviews, frames of thought? Like what about the new age movement, or whatever tends to pull you're just becoming agnostic, or even atheistic. I mean, like, let me take a step. This didn't give the peak of my knowledge here didn't give me what I was looking for. So let's go look somewhere else and let's see if
right.
they have it. Or it's a there can also just be kind of the, like, I'm just going to shut off my brain. Like, I'm just not meant to experience fulfillment. And just kind of, I'm going to draw the line and stay here because it's safe. It's what I know. It hurts like everything. I'm dying on the inside, but you can use scripture to justify it. We're supposed to die. So I'm going to die on the inside because that's what we're supposed to do. Take up your cross. I'm just going to die. Or then there's the invitation into mystery.
Yeah. And I think it metaphorically, if you look at Christ's journey during Passion Week, the trial, the torture, the Via Dolorosa, the cross, that kind of thing. I think it's really analogous to our lives in general. I'm walking this path. There's suffering on it. There's wonderful things. There's a wedding in Canaan where the wine is flowing and it's awesome. And there's the feeding the 5,000, and there's the healings, and there's the debates with people around that, and the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and but here's the point. I think most of us have been taught to come to the cross, and I think that's what we should do. That's the path. But what I don't see a lot of is going through the cross to the other side. That's the mystery. Resurrection, the death is not the mystery. The death is very human. We understand that. Like Jordan Peterson talks about, in that vignette is he Christ faces every last human fear conceivable. And that's very understandable to us because we all have those experiences. Abandonment, betrayal, loneliness, suffering. We all have that. We've all experienced that, and that's a unifying thing because we can look at Christ and say, "I have this problem," and He's like, "Me too. I experienced that as well." But then the mystery is what is on the other side of the cross, going through the cross to the other side. And so maybe we've come to the cross and we've knelt there and we've been covered in the blood of Jesus. Awesome, wonderful, such a gift, beautiful, all those things. Life, all the words. But then what does it look like on the other side? Because his story didn't stop there. It didn't stop when he said, "It is finished." If it had stopped there, that's a very human story. No
Mhm.
different than Joan of Arc or Thomas More or any of these martyrs. Story's no different. Self-sacrificial love, confronting the system that you live in and the system fighting back. Like the story is very familiar to us. The mystery is what happens on the other side of that, the resurrection, the new life, the thing that baptism, the sacrament of baptism illustrates to us, the tangible thing that points to the eternal, the seed falling to the ground and dying. Like there's got to be something more on the other side. And I think scripture tells us there's something more. Like in the Chronicles of Narnia, in the last book, the last battle, like come higher up, come deeper in, fall into the black hole. Trust me to hold you in this and to walk you through this process, through the mystery. To me, that's what we're looking at as far as humility goes, is there's that event horizon, there's the cross, there's that place where I stop, where the death of my ego, of who I was, of what I thought of myself, of that happens. And you could just stay dead, or you could take that step off into the abyss.
It seems to me like relationships most fundamentally are taking all of your taking all of who you are and participating in the life of another.
Mhm.
That there's this sense, and we look at marriage as like that is a fundamental way to describe what marriage is. And we experience that in various capacities to various degrees, and the depth and type of relationship determine how much participation of your life in with another's. Um, and for relationships to be meaningful, it has to go beyond just something intellectual. Like there has to be an experiential participation of life, whatever that ends up looking like for the relationship. Similarly, I think perhaps the place where humility as being relational comes into play is that this is the crux of the question of the Christian faith. If you can get past the you can get past the objective truth, did Jesus rise from the dead? Then you move to the subjective question of, if he rose from the dead, can I participate in his life? Can I participate in the mystery of beyond intellectual assent, but to full participation of my life with his?
Right.
And if I can't, if I can't find my way to that experience and that participation of life, the only logical conclusion is some form of either, intellectual or pragmatic atheism. Like to your point, there really is nothing supernatural about the gospel at that point.
Mm. There's something truly resonating as in the human experience and what it looks like to be a human being, of course.
Right.
But is there anything transcendent about it?
Right.
Prior to that Sunday morning, prior to the tomb being empty, is there anything transcendent? No, no. Everything else, not that not that I believe that it is explainable in this way, but everything else I can logic to.
Right.
How did Jesus heal the leper? Or, what was it a demon possession, or did they just have psychological issues? And why you would have to separate those two, I'm not really sure, but that's a rabbit trail for another day.
That's fair.
But until you get to the point where he was dead, he was pierced, he was gone, he was laid in the tomb, he was prepared for burial, and then you come back on that Sunday morning and he's not there. And not only is he not there, but he's out hanging out with people
Right.
on the road to Emmaus, by the Sea of Galilee, walking through walls into, the disciples meeting, like he's not there. That is transcendent. That I cannot explain. Everything else, I can take a feeble attempt at explaining psychologically, physics wise. He walked on water. Okay, well, maybe this happened. The surface tension of the water was increased because of the electrical storm that was going on, whatever. I cannot explain him not being in that tomb. So the only other option I have the only other option I have, well, not only other option, I have a few options. I can say that didn't happen. Okay. And that's the atheistic, agnostic. There's many different forms you can go down that road. Okay. I can stand in the presence of that mystery and I can believe in my spirit, in my heart, in my mind that that happened and I can't explain how it happened other than the supernatural God operating in this way. Okay. The crucifixion doesn't cause me to make a choice, really.
Right.
At that point, I can just see him as a good teacher, as a wise man, which so often happens with wise men. They get killed because they point out the flaws within the structure.
Correct.
Beyond when it comes to the resurrection, I can no longer say that this was just a good teacher, a wise man. As C.S. Lewis says, like you can't just claim Jesus is a good man. He's either absolutely batshit crazy, claiming to be God and all these things, or he is who he says he is. You can't claim that because out of his own mouth, he said these words: I and the Father are one. I'm the Son of Man. I'm the Son of David. Like all these things that like he claims about himself. So either he's insane, he's a lunatic, or he's the Son of God. Those are your choices. But you can't be in the middle. He's just a great teacher. He's just a prophet. He's just whatever.
Well, I mean, the only real way to be in the middle is to turn a blind eye, ignore or not know the evidence. I mean, it's to your point. And so humility then. Okay, sorry, let me take one step back. Within the human heart is a drive for transcendence. And I think part of it is probably is to deal with the ache of the inherent despair that comes from just from our own limitations, lack of meaning in what we build, all of those types of things. Like if you can quell that ache in a number of different any number of ways, or you can try to soothe it any number of ways, but fundamentally that ache is a drive and a surge for transcendence in some capacity.
Right. In
So
one
then
capacity or another.
one capacity or the other. So then the question becomes how do you find that transcendence? And do you try to achieve it for yourself, by yourself, on your own? Um, I mean, there's questions around use of psychedelics and other types of things to achieve some felt transcendence in some capacity. Um, and there's a lot of questions about, the reality of that stuff in my mind. That's another rabbit trail we don't have to go down. But um, um, or do you experience that transcendence through Christ's transcendence by falling into the black hole of mystery and in the participation of life.
Right. Right. Because you're going to experience transcendence at some point. And what do you attribute it to? You're going to. You're going to have a moment of transcendence where everything in your life seems to have culminated in this moment, or this is happening and I have no explanation for it. Like you're going to experience that. What do you do with it? We were
Well, in
just
the
at my mom's 75th birthday party. We had a surprise party for over the weekend. And as you do at these parties, you're sitting around telling stories and that kind of thing. And I don't know, like I guess I had never told my brother and sister and my mom this story, but like when my dad was really sick, we had driven up there to visit him. It's height of COVID, September 11th, 2021, in the midst of it, and he had a bowel rupture, and you know any medical professional will tell you that's probably the most painful thing you can experience, and people usually don't last more than an hour in the midst of the pain and the sepsis and everything that happens in that. He was up where they were at. They don't have a surgery medical center. They just had like an emergency hospital kind of thing. So they kept him alive for 7 hours in the midst of that. Dad was a tough guy, just a tough guy. Um, so eventually the decision was made to medevac him, fly him in a helicopter down here to where I'm at. And remember walking with the medical team to load him onto the helicopter. They needed help. And so I'm walking along, just me and the medical team, and we're loading him in, and it's like a jigsaw puzzle. You put him in, and then you slide it around, and all those kinds of things. And he's in and out of consciousness. We put him in, and he turns and he looks at me, and it was this lucid moment where he said, "I always wanted to ride on a helicopter." And those are the last words I heard from my dad.
Mm.
That moment was transcendent. It was as if in that moment, I knew that this was the last conversation. This was the last whatever, interaction we were going to have. I don't know why I knew that. I just knew it. And so push him in, and he says that, and I go, "Dad, I'm glad you're getting to go on a helicopter ride." Those are the last words I said to him. And then
Wow.
close the door. We walk off, rotor start. He's gone. 3 days later, he's gone. He's dead. Um, that's a transcendent moment for me personally. And what do I do with that? Do I sink into the mystery of this guy's in and out of consciousness? He's on pain medication. He's all these things. And scientifically, what's happening? And this is just the firing of his neurons, and he says that. Or do I look at it and say, for once in the entirety of our relationship, he was vulnerable and said something that he enjoyed and always wanted to do.
Wow.
I choose to see it as the second. A good man, provide for his family, work hard, business owner, just burden after burden, leader at church, all these things. He just was such a stoic, stolid man. And yet, at the end of his life, the last words he said to family, to me, was, "I always wanted to go on a helicopter ride." I'd never heard him say what he wanted.
Mm.
Even something like dinner. What do you guys want for dinner? I don't know. Come on, Dad, what do you want? I don't know. Would never make a choice because I just think he felt like his job was to serve others, not make choices for himself. And this was the last moment where he got to say, I always wanted to ride on a helicopter. That was a transcendent moment for me. And so I could go into atheism and the explanations of that, the neurobiology and psychology and everything of why, or I could stand in the presence of the mystery that he said what he wanted and he got that thing. And that was the last thing that he wanted to communicate.
Wow. Is it possible that one of the disciplines for the curious intellectual mind, or even just the human mind, is to draw a line in the sand and say, I'm okay with not knowing? And even, and I know for, I have friends for whom this is much easier than it is for me, where they just throw up their hands and it's like there's an admission of I don't know it all. It's all right. It's going to be okay. But part of what you're saying is that this is not a riddle to be solved. We're not here on a scientific discovery of how these lucid thoughts occur in somebody's. We're here recognizing that we're in the presence, or that we're in an experience that is bigger than us, that has significance and meaning.
Whether you look at scripture from, yes, 1000% yes. You look at it from an intellectual viewpoint. Scripture tells us that man's wisdom is foolishness to God, and God's wisdom is foolishness to man. And you look at that and you go, okay, all our intellectual approaches, all our philosophies, all our theologies, they're they're good because they're thoughts about existence and God and what it looks like. But the second we step over into I know how this works is where it all loses everything. Okay, it loses all direction. It becomes arrogance at that point. We can't do it. We do. We do, but we can't do it. Like that, to me, that's the line between humility and arrogance. I think fear plays a massive part in that dynamic. It's not just I know, it's I have to know.
The only place where you can say with certainty that if this happens, that happens is in a system that you design and control.
It's the only way.
And and I would argue, just as for the sake of example, mathematics is a man. It's truth aligned. I'm not saying it's false, but it's a man-made system to model the way that the world works. And there are very interesting patterns, but there's also some very bizarre things like imaginary numbers and other types of craziness
Hmm.
that fractals really did a lot to help understand the mathematical nature of things like flames and mountains and other types of things that don't appear to have a simple pattern. But
Hmm.
mathematics is a human-made construct that we get to utterly control. And as such, we can say with definity, it works like this. Um, by very definition, unless we ourselves are God, we are participating in a system that we, number one, did not create, do not understand, and number two, don't control. And so it takes what we like to do is to make inferences from this little window that we see. Um, and I'm just saying exactly what you're saying. I'm just putting it into slightly different terms.
Yeah.
Um, and
Well,
so the
in
only
that, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
well the only way then to make sense of the system in any capacity, especially when your own capacity to understand the system is limited, is to engage in relationship with that person. So um, one of our kids made a purchase, and yeah, and I ordered something on my phone for them. They brought their cash, and they're like counting out the money, and here's the coins, and is this right? And they go counting, and like, no, you overpaid me by 5 cents. Um, I have a higher level of maturity in the system of accounting and finance and money than they do, and the way
Right.
they moved, right? Like the way that they got past their ignorance was through engaging in relationship with me around that for this
Yeah.
particular problem. They weren't saying, teach me the way this is, and sometimes uh, they will grow up and they'll tell me, Dad, you told us so many times. I just wanted a simple answer and I just wanted you to help me and you explain how the whole thing worked. And I apologize for that in advance. I'm sure there's many times they get explanations they really aren't looking for, um, but 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 isn't that also the way that it works with God? The only way that we access the transcendent. So here we are, we have our own little world that we've created and control and manage, and then something comes in and it disrupts it, and we're like, okay, now what do I do? I don't have the capacity to deal with this. The only way that we can gain the insight required is in relationship with one who is transcendent, who created it, who understands the nuances and intricacies of how it worked, and dare I say, in some capacity, set up the rules for how this thing works, whatever that ends up looking like.
Right.
He knows the rules of the chess game, whatever it is, and that's a mirror image, and that's why when Jesus died, going through the cross, it's he made access for us to have communion with the one who created this. Not so that God would impart his omniscience to us,
No.
but so that through relationship we could interact with the Father and have the insight that we need on how to navigate this life.
Right.
I interrupted you. Back to you.
No, no, no. I mean, it's in that system with that foundational understanding that he put everything in motion. Everything was created through him. And it was an act of love, an act of, I want to share this, knowing and being known. I want to have this relationship. So your point being that in order to understand this, to know this, you have to have interaction with the creator of the game. What keeps us from interaction with the creator of the game? It's fear.
Right.
And so within that larger game, I can take my part and I can make this game and I can create this microcosm that I'm in control of, whether it's my business or my family or my internal world or whatever the case may be. Like I create that and I control that. And at that point, the only thing that you can do is manipulate to preserve your world. It's the only
Right.
thing you can do. And how
Right.
many of us live in our microcosms with our world, with our rules, and we're great unless some external force comes in and starts disrupting our world.
Yeah.
That scares the hell out of me. Like think about this, the analogy of a castle. Like what is the purpose of a castle?
It's, fundamentally, keep out invaders, stay safe,
Protection, right?
protection.
There is everything in the castle is built around one room. That room is called the keep.
Right.
When something from outside tries to come inside, everybody goes to the keep, and it's the most secure place in that castle, the most secure place in the most secure place. You go to the keep. And what do you keep in the keep? I mean, just metaphorically, like what do you keep in the keep as an individual in your castle? What's in your keep?
Right. Wow. And you can either put in, I just noticed, I just had this observation while I was asking. You ask so many rhetorical questions and I go and answer them. Um, the the we have the choice just to make it blatantly obvious. Like, what are we going to protect at all costs? Is it our reputation? Is it our financial security? Is it our status, our image? I'm repeating. Is it felt safety? Is it our health? Is it any number of things? Um, or are we going to fight? Are we going to put in our keep the one thing that Jesus has already promised us, which is his presence with us? And is that the thing that we will contend for? Not that there's really anything to contend for, but is that are we willing to let that be the center?
Right.
And fundamentally, he has promised to provide that. So we have
Right.
the choice then of putting our treasures in the keep and we defend the castle,
Hmm.
or we can say, this is the center. And when I make it the center, he's responsible for defending it. And if
Right.
this truly becomes the most valuable thing to me, then I'm good. So fundamentally, it comes down to the question, a values question. Are you willing to make that be the number one thing in your life and orient your life around that?
Right. Well, to take the analogy one step further, what's the fundamental flaw of a castle? What's its
I mean,
vulnerability?
the moat or the drawbridge or the tell me.
No. It can be surrounded, completely cut off from anything outside coming in.
Right, right,
That's how, in militarily, how you defeat a stronghold like that is you surround it and starve it out.
right. That's fair. Yes.
That's the fundamental flaw, which is strangely interesting, analogous to the greatest human fear, being alone, being isolated, being rejected, being shunned.
So, okay, this is a really fascinating analogy because fundamentally, what you're saying is that there is ultimately no protection for self-protection. So, if you live with self-protection, there will always be a master manipulator who is able to surround you with your self-protection and back you into a corner.
Yep.
So I want to work through some examples. Like what are some, just for fun, can we go through a handful of examples of self-protective mechanisms that people use and how
Yeah.
master manipulators use that? Like what's in the keep or what's the castle and what's the isolation
That breaks it or
that breaks
brings
it
it to its knees.
or brings it to its knees, right? And how do master manipulators? Well, and sometimes it's God himself. How does God himself surround that? What's the force that he uses to starve that? It can be used for good or for evil.
If let's start with that one because I really like the rabbit trail that could go from that one. So if what is in your keep is your hopes, dreams, expectations, your will be done kind of thing. These are the things that I want, and this is in my keep, and I protect it at all costs. How does God approach that? It would be my contention that he stands at the gate to the castle and he asks to be let in. You ready to drop the drawbridge now? The person of Jesus standing at the gate, knocking, asking, seeking. Will you allow me in? And I either say yes or no, each individual making their own decision. But I know that I know that I know that if I drop that bridge where he's heading, he's not going into the throne room to have a banquet. He's going to go directly to the keep and knock on that door.
Wait a minute, Kevin. Do you know how many sermons have been preached about giving God the throne room of your heart? And like
My guess is, and I'm not an expert on this, but quite a few, quite a few.
okay, but then what's fascinating to me is if your hopes, dreams, and expectations are in that keep, guess how you're going to be manipulated? All I have to do is tell you that I hold this secret to your hopes and dreams and expectations. And that can be any number of things. Again,
Yep.
just the common ones: financial success. I want to be wealthy. Okay, great. We early on in the podcast, he talked about this guy selling this. Amazon will pay you $20,000 a month. Like,
All right.
okay, if your hopes and dream, if financial hopes and dreams are in your keep, then that's unless you have barring any other filters in your drawbridge, that's going to pull you. And anybody who comes up with a convincing, compelling argument that speaks to that promises to be your savior, promises to
Mm-hmm.
take you there. You're susceptible. If somebody wants to manipulate you, all they have to do is say, "Hey, if you do this thing for me, then I'll help you do X, Y, and Z." And you become absolutely blinded to the fact that they don't even have the capacity to give you that. And
Mm-hmm.
and you become blind to the manipulation and you fall trap into their prey. That is the enemy tactic.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible then? And this gets into questions around the theology of the nature of God, but is it possible that God, in his mercy, allows those dreams to starve and to die so that recognizing that he indeed is the greatest treasure to
Mm-hmm.
get us to the place of admission that we need him in the keep?
Yeah, I mean, is it possible? Yeah, but maybe there's a different way of viewing that. Who has closed and locked the door?
Right?
Was it him?
No.
Who has put their hopes and dreams and longings and desires behind a locked door in the most secure place within the castle? Wasn't him. That door doesn't lock from the outside. It locks from the inside.
So then it stands
Does
to reason.
does God allow? Of course. Did he bring it about? No. I'm just afraid of what he's going to do with my hopes and dreams and desires and expectations. That's why I won't unlock the door.
Okay, so here's a better analogy. There's a you're in a castle out in the middle of who knows where. There's no threat outside, but there's a perceived threat. So you close up, lock the door, and you starve yourself to death because you view what you have in your keep as more valuable than anything else, and you must protect it at all costs, even at the cost of your own starvation.
Right.
Until finally you get to this point of desperation where it's like, yeah, I mean, and this point is different for different people, but I'm not willing to sacrifice my health this much, my family this much, my personal well-being this much, my relationship with God this much. Like I've reached the point of I've reached such an utter point of starvation that I must unlock the door and allow him in, or I hear him knocking and I've just gotten a taste or a glimpse and I'm curious and I want to know a little bit more about what he's like, and I'm
Right.
willing to engage him in conversation and opening that door little by little.
Yeah. There's this curious, like as you're talking about it, this scene from the one of the Matrix movies pops up. In the second one, there's this despicable character called the Merovingian, and he holds the keys. He's created his own little kingdom, and he is so enamored with his kingdom, and he's just about self-protection. He's just about soothing his feelings, and so whether it's sexual or it's drinking or whatever, he's just very um, wrapped up in all of that. And then the Neo character comes in and he's asking for the keeper of the keys to unlock these things. And he says, no, I'm not going to do it. That would destroy my kingdom. And they end up getting the keeper of the keys directly because of the lust, the never being satisfied, the insistence on self-soothing of the Merovingian. They end up getting these keys. And it's like that's kind of what you were describing to me. It's like the dragon who just accumulates gold and gold and gold and gold. Like the greed of self protection. I never can have enough. The rich man who says how much is enough, and he says just a little bit more.
Mhm.
Like that's that mindset. So like there's people that will put their hopes and dreams in the keep, and you know whether it's financial success, and I do everything to bring financial success, and it comes and it comes and it comes and it comes, and then I have to protect it. So there's that extreme. Then there's the others who put their, their hopes and their dreams for financial success in the keep, and then it never comes. And they're a victim of the world and of all these things. If this would have happened, if this would have happened, if this would have happened, then I would have been successful. Like all of these responses are very human. And yet Jesus comes to that door of the keep and knocks and just stays there, just asking, seeking, knocking. He's not breaking that door down.
Right.
It's just an invitation. Will you let me in? And I think the coerce, like the way that the coercive nature of a lot of our religious experiences makes us believe that he's going to break that door down.
Right.
Or I have these things in my keep, and it's these spiritual things that are keeping me from it. And maybe I find this guru, whatever form he or she comes in, and they can free those, open the keep, and they can free, the hopes and dreams and desires. But they're no different than the guy on Amazon that says you can make 20,000 a month. Amazon will pay you. All right, they're no different. They're making promises. all to avoid the very real reality that our lives are ours and we get to choose, and we can choose to embrace life as it is, the reality of it, and learn lessons from it and be humble, or we can choose to avoid all of that in arrogance driven by fear.
Right.
It's just the very real reality of it. But very few want to hear that story. There's got to be some sort of shortcut, quick fix.
Right.
Got to be a cheat code that I can put in. That's the reality.
Yeah.
If somebody offers to walk with you through the valley and they show that they don't want to fix you, they're not interested in getting you out of the valley, they offer to walk with you through it so you're not alone, that's good, friend. If somebody comes into the valley and promises you a shortcut to get out of it, or that the valley isn't real, or anything along those lines, be wary.
Mm.
They're asking you to not trust your senses. And I'm not here saying that your senses are always correct and your feelings are always correct. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
What I'm saying is they need to be heard. They need to be listened to. There's a message that's being communicated. What message is that that's being communicated?
Right. And there has to be a calibration with reality. Your talents, you've mentioned before that emotional maturity is measured by the size of truth that you can stand in front of without running. Um, there's also seems to be a correlating principle that the truth you're willing, the dosage of reality that you're willing to tolerate will be approximately the dosage of truth that the people around you will tolerate,
Yep.
and vice versa. So
Hmm.
part of I think this is actually something that's really important to, we're almost out of time, but it's really important to touch on is that a lot of people expect that they can embrace, they can let God into the keep. They can start looking to adapt their life around reality, and the world around them won't have to reorient. And
Right.
the, I think it's true for both of us. I think I'm sure there's been a point in my life where I've lost a friend or two because their truth tolerance was higher than mine.
Me
Um,
too.
and then also vice versa. I know that I've lost friends. It's like great people, get along, say hi, but there's not a friendship because my truth tolerance is is higher than theirs, and they feel if you're not willing to be humbled, you're going to feel awkward. You're going to feel potentially even ashamed,
Right.
uncomfortable around people who you're afraid of being exposed when you're around people who tell the truth. And there is a sense in which you will be exposed. The question is, are these people who love the truth and love people, is their relationship in the process? Is there a healthy embrace of reality? Is there a relationship? Is there value for each other? And if that's the case, then yes, there is some sense in which we end up being exposed. But what ends up being exposed is the fact that we've held things in our keep that aren't worth protecting, and that
Right.
there's something far better that we can exchange them for.
Right. Right. In many senses, and I say this are, tongue in cheek and it's irreverent, but in many senses, God seems to be the turd in the punch bowl. I'm just having a good time drinking punch and there's party. And then I look over and I go, oh, wow. And we don't like that.
Right.
He messes up our plans.
Yeah.
Everything was so curated and so beautiful. Have you ever walked into a house where you look at it and it looks like a museum and you're like, do people actually live here?
Right.
I had this one experience with this client once. She was an older lady and she was really struggling with a lot of things. And every time I came over to talk with her, her house just looked curated like a museum. And one time I showed up and at the door, she opened it and I could just see on her, she was always put together, always dressed well, always makeup and hair and, all that kind of stuff. Looked very disheveled. And I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Oh, it's just been a busy day." And I look around and she had three or four dogs. And the dogs had like gone to the bathroom in the house. And like it was just this disturbing scene. And I was like, "Are you okay?" It's just been a little overwhelmed, just busy. I said, "Do you want me, do you need some help? I'm thinking I could come in, I could help you clean up a little bit, whatever the case may be." And she goes, "Oh, no, 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 I was just about to get started. Could we reschedule to next week?" Maintaining the facade. Although
Mhm.
I'm there, I'm seeing all my senses are assaulted by what's in front of me. And no, could you come back next week? Of course I can. But are you okay? Oh yeah, yeah, I'm okay. I said, okay, like you have the right to choose that. I walk away. I immediately called her daughter, who I knew as well, and I was like, hey, something's going on here. It doesn't make me comfortable that she's alone. And she goes, okay, I'm on my way home. And she goes home and she starts to unfold the story about things that had happened in this lady's life over the last week. And she's trying to maintain this view of everything's okay when it really isn't. It's like things like that. Like it just broke my heart. And so I say that to say we create these images of ourselves in the world of who we are. And sometimes I just can't cover it. And if I can't cover it, what do I do? Do I ask for help? Am I humble? Or do I continue to put the arrogant face on because I'm afraid of the perception of others? And in that sense, it's like that's your choice. That's your event horizon right there. Can you come to grips with the fact that I don't have it all together and I'm kind of a mess? And can I ask for help?
We like to think of courage as suck it up, clean up. Like that's heralded as a strong person. And this isn't necessarily a new thought by any stretch of the imagination, but courage, as you're describing it, is to lean into the fear and potentially the shame of not being okay and not having it all together and
Not being enough.
not being enough. And dare I say, for most of us, maybe even all of us, before that can happen with the world, it needs to happen with one person. And the
Right.
more that we find relationships in which we discover that it's safe and it's okay not to have everything together, the more we can grow that to two people, three people, four people. At some point, in some capacity, we become increasingly comfortable with the world, whatever they may think of us, recognizing that we're not
Right.
perfect.
And maybe that's what growth in the kingdom looks like. Whereas we were talking about exponential growth before versus arithmetic, like maybe God's plan is arithmetic growth of like 1 plus 1, 2 plus 2 equals 4. 4 plus 4 equals 8. Maybe that's the growth that I can be comfortable in front of you. And then once I feel secure there, I can be comfortable in this place. And it's a growth and a growth and a growth from there. Whereas maybe the danger of the influencer, the social media influencer, is the exponential growth. And I'm put in this place where I'm in front of millions and millions of people, and I'm still not comfortable in my own skin.
Right.
And then I just become a train wreck because it's too much for me to bear because there hasn't been a foundation that's been laid brick by brick. It's just been a lean-to structure that is great while it's sunny and there isn't any wind, but that wind picks up, the rain comes, the earth starts shaking, and that thing's coming down.
With and it's not just social media influencers, it's anybody who's put into any level of leadership in any capacity who's ill prepared, who's ill prepared and ill supported.
Yeah, right.
And how many people in just as an example, how many people in our churches are in that position? And again, it's a very unfair place to put them.
It
Um,
breaks my heart.
and maybe this whole idea is scriptural. I have to think of, is it in Isaiah where it talks about building line upon line, precept upon precept, one plus, it has the idea of one plus one. Um, and and really maybe, I mean, there's so many directions that we can go with all of this, but um, there's a saying, smooth is slow, smooth is slow, and sorry, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Um,
Hmm.
and part of what happens with when you are pursuing, when in the center of your, and this goes back to the shortcuts and the cheat, looking for the cheat codes, like this all comes back together, and it's like the hardest thing in the world. If you can learn to be comfortable in the plus one, and make Christ be allow Christ to be in the center of your castle. Like
Right.
that's, if we have to reduce this journey and this quest that we're on, maybe it's really as simple as that, to find the things that distract us away from that, that bring noise away from that,
Right.
and just come back to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, from bumper stickers to castles
Castles to
and exponents and random numbers and CPU temperatures,
so good.
it's
It's a
so good.
very typical conversation
Very typical
for
conversation.
us.
All right. So for those of you guys listening, thank you once again for being part of the journey. And if this is your first time listening, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify. We're on Substack. A lot of our articles, a lot of our content gets put out as articles. So if you're more of a reader and you stumbled on us, you can get it there as well, or you just like getting it from in multiple forms of media. Um, so thanks so much for going on the journey with us. And Kevin, it's been a pleasure, just like always.
As always. See you next time.
Right, next time.